Ambassador James Washington walked into the huge meeting room of the Galactic Council. The walls were made of crystal and sparkled with light from many different alien worlds. Colors danced everywhere like a beautiful light show. Next to him, Dr. Maya Thompson carried papers with Earth's trade ideas. She held them with the same proud way that made other aliens respect humans, even though they thought humans were weak. The Vorthan aliens sat in the middle of the room. They looked like big lizards covered in shiny metal pieces that showed how rich they were. Their boss, High Trader Vex, stood up. You could tell he didn't like humans just by looking at his face. Vex started talking in a voice that sounded like he owned the whole galaxy. Friends of the Council, we're here to talk about humans wanting equal trade rights. But I have to ask, do these baby creatures really deserve to sit with the grown-ups? James kept smiling, but some of the smarter aliens noticed his hands didn't move at all on the speaking stand. Thanks for being honest, High Trader. We're happy to show you why humans are good for galactic business. Vex laughed, and it sounded like metal scraping against metal. Show us? Your people have only been in space for 200 years. We were building space empires when you humans were still hitting each other with rocks. Maybe you should just be our junior partners. You know, for your own safety. The whole room went quiet. Even the Kellic aliens, who always whispered to each other, stopped talking. Dr. Thompson stopped writing and looked at her boss. James kept smiling, but something changed in his eyes. It was a tiny change, but the older, wiser aliens suddenly started paying very close attention. James spoke very quietly. I see. That's very kind of you to worry about us. The room felt different now. It was like when storm clouds gather before lightning strikes. The alien diplomats who had studied humans before started to feel worried. They remembered reading about human history, all the wars, all the times humans had been nice until they suddenly weren't nice anymore. Dr. Thompson gathered her papers very carefully, like a robot. When a friendly alien tried to make small talk with her, she answered politely but coldly. This made the bug-like alien feel uncomfortable. Captain Deshaun Rivers, who was in charge of human security, spoke quietly into his radio. Instead of his usual relaxed way of talking, he used short, military words. His team moved around the room differently too. Before, they looked casual. Now they looked like soldiers getting ready for battle, but trying to hide it. The Nexri ambassador, whose people had studied human psychology, felt scared. She had read secret reports about human wars and how humans could be very violent when talking didn't work. What she was seeing now matched exactly what those reports said happened before humans stopped being peaceful. When the meeting started again, James took the microphone. He still stood straight and spoke professionally, but all the warmth was gone from his voice. It was like talking to a computer that looked like a human. James looked directly at Vex. Hi Trader, I'm curious about your thoughts on protection. What kind of dangers do you think humans might face out here in space? Vex didn't understand that everything had changed. He leaned forward eagerly, like a cat playing with what it thought was a mouse. Oh, there are many dangers for species that aren't ready. Space pirates, trade wars, unfortunate accidents that happen to people who go places they don't belong. Space can be very unfriendly to those without the right guidance. The Nexri ambassador started reaching for her emergency communicator, but then she noticed something scary. Captain Rivers and his team had somehow moved near every door in the room without anyone seeing them do it. They weren't blocking the exits yet, but they were in position to do it very quickly if needed. Other aliens in the room started to understand what was happening. The humans weren't weak. They weren't helpless. They had been playing a game this whole time, and now the game was about to change completely. James nodded thoughtfully, like a teacher listening to a student give the wrong answer. That's very interesting, High Trader. Since you mention accidents, I think this would be a good time to share some information about our own security research. The air in the room felt thick and heavy. Everyone could sense that something big was about to happen. The polite, friendly humans they thought they knew were about to show their true face, and it was going to be terrifying. Dr. Thompson opened her tablet and smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile anymore. It was the kind of smile a shark might have if sharks could smile. We've been very busy learning about our galactic neighbors, she said sweetly. High Trader Vex suddenly looked less confident. For the first time since the meeting started, he seemed to realize that maybe he had made a big mistake. The humans weren't acting like scared children anymore. They were acting like something much more dangerous that had just decided to stop pretending to be harmless. James Washington spoke in his calm, professional voice, but something had changed. I think we need a short break. Maybe 30 minutes to think about these interesting ideas we've heard today. As the different alien groups started to leave their seats and move around the room, some of the smarter aliens began to notice things. Small things. Scary things. Captain Deshaun Rivers, the man in charge of keeping the humans safe, was talking into his small radio device. But he wasn't talking the way he usually did. Before the break, he spoke in a relaxed, friendly way. Now his words were short and sharp, like a soldier giving orders. Team Alpha, maintain perimeter. Team Beta, secure communication lines. All units, go to condition yellow. His security team started moving differently too. Before, they had been standing around casually, looking like regular people. Now they moved with the smooth, careful steps of trained fighters. They spread out around the room in a pattern that looked random, but wasn't random at all. They were getting into fighting positions while trying to make it look natural. Dr. Maya Thompson gathered up her papers and files with robot-like movements. Every motion was exact and controlled. Her warm, friendly smile was completely gone. Instead, her face looked like a polite mask that hid something cold underneath. A bug-like alien from Altair tried to make friendly conversation with her during the break. Dr. Thompson, what beautiful weather we're having on the station today, the creature said, trying to be nice. Maya looked at the alien with empty, professional politeness. Yes, the environmental systems are functioning within normal parameters. Please excuse me, I have materials to review. Her voice was so cold and formal that the bug alien actually took a step back, feeling scared without knowing why. The Nexri ambassador watched all of this with growing fear. Her people had spent years studying humans, trying to understand how their minds worked. She had read secret government files about human history, all the terrible wars they had fought, all the times they had seemed peaceful until they suddenly became incredibly violent. What she was seeing now matched perfectly with what those files said happened right before humans stopped being diplomatic and started being deadly. The behavioral patterns were exactly the same as what human soldiers showed right before major battles in their history. Her hands started shaking slightly as she remembered one particular report. It had described how human military units would suddenly become very quiet and professional right before launching devastating attacks. The report called it combat protocol activation, when humans switched from being social creatures to being pure killing machines. When everyone came back from the break, James walked up to the speaking platform again. He still stood perfectly straight, and his voice still sounded professional, but every single trace of human warmth was gone. It was like listening to a computer that happened to sound like a person. The older, more experienced diplomats from different worlds started to feel very nervous. They had been in enough dangerous situations to recognize when something was about to go very wrong. James looked directly at High Trader Vex with eyes that showed no emotion at all. High Trader Vex, I'm very interested in hearing more about your thoughts on protection. Can you tell us exactly what kinds of dangers you think humanity might face in today's galactic environment? Vex still didn't understand what was happening. He was like a person who couldn't see that they were standing in front of a loaded cannon. He leaned forward with excitement, thinking he was winning the conversation. Oh, there are so many dangers for species that aren't prepared for the real galaxy, Vex said with fake concern in his voice. There are space pirates who attack trade ships. There are trade wars where stronger species crush weaker ones. And sometimes, terrible accidents happen to people who travel into areas where they don't belong. The galaxy can be very cruel to those who don't have the right kind of protection. The way he said the word protection made it clear he was threatening the humans. He was basically saying, pay us money and do what we say, or bad things will happen to you. The Nexri ambassador's training kicked in. She started reaching for her emergency communicator to warn her government that something big was about to happen. But then she froze. Captain Rivers and his security team had somehow moved to positions near every single exit door in the huge room. They weren't blocking the doors yet, but they were close enough to do it in seconds if they wanted to. And nobody had seen them move there. One moment they were spread around the room randomly, and the next moment they were controlling all the escape routes. Even worse, she noticed that each security team member had their hand resting casually near their weapons. They weren't drawing their guns, but they were ready to do it instantly. The other alien diplomats started to notice too. Quiet conversations stopped. The usual background noise of a busy political meeting disappeared. Everyone could feel that the mood in the room had changed completely. The humans weren't acting like the polite, friendly people they had been pretending to be. They were acting like predators who had just decided to stop hiding what they really were. James continued speaking in his emotionless voice. Thank you for explaining the dangers, High Trader. Since you seem to know so much about accidents and protection, I think this would be a perfect time to share some information about humanity's own security assessments. High Trader Vex finally started to realize that maybe he had made a mistake. The confident look on his face began to crack, like ice breaking on a frozen lake. But it was already too late. The humans had been polite for as long as they were going to be polite. Now everyone was about to see what happened when humanity's nice mask came off completely. High Trader Vex made the biggest mistake of his life. He stood up from his fancy chair, looking around the room like he owned everything and everyone in it. He thought he was about to win the game completely. "Let me make this very clear to everyone," Vex announced loudly, his voice full of fake confidence. "The human colonies at New Boston, Liberty Station, and Hope's Landing are in very dangerous parts of space. It would be so sad if terrible accidents happened to those places while we're still talking about protection deals. I'm sure Ambassador Washington understands just how unsafe his people really are right now." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Vex had just openly threatened to attack human civilian colonies, places where millions of innocent people lived, worked, and raised their children. He was basically saying, "Do what we want, or we'll hurt your families." The entire chamber went so silent you could hear a pin drop. The only sound was the quiet hum of the air systems keeping everyone alive. Even that seemed incredibly loud in the deadly quiet room. James Washington stood up very slowly. Every movement was controlled and precise, like a big cat getting ready to pounce on its prey. There was something terrifying about how calm and smooth his movements were. "High Trader Vex," James said in a voice so professionally calm it made everyone's skin crawl. It was the same tone that doctors used when they had to tell families that someone had died. "I really appreciate how much you care about human safety. Since we're sharing information to help each other understand the situation better, maybe I should tell you about some research humanity has been doing." Suddenly, a huge holographic display appeared above the center of the room. It showed the Vorthan home planet in perfect detail. But this wasn't just a pretty picture. The display was covered with red marks, numbers, and tactical information that made it look like a military target map. Every single Vorthan space station was marked. Every military base was labeled. Every important building on their home planet was identified with detailed information about its weaknesses. James continued talking in his scary calm voice. "For example, we've learned some interesting things about your main shipbuilding facility at Kepler Station. Did you know that your entire operation depends on just one fusion reactor? And if someone were to mess with the cooling system for more than 14 minutes, the whole thing would have a critical meltdown? Really fascinating engineering problem." The blood drained from Vex's scaly face. How could the humans possibly know such detailed, secret information about Vorthan military installations? Dr. Maya Thompson touched her tablet, and more holographic screens filled the air around the room. These showed shipping records, intercepted communications, financial documents, and secret business deals. "We've also been studying your organization's various business activities," Maya said with the same cold politeness as her boss. "Like the slave labor camps you run on Rigel 7. And the illegal weapons you've been selling to criminals in the Outer Rim. Oh, and let's not forget your drug manufacturing and distribution network that's been poisoning people throughout human space." Vex's confident expression completely fell apart. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "How did you? That information is supposed to be completely secret. Our highest security classifications." James smiled, but it was the most terrifying smile anyone in the room had ever seen. It was polite, professional, and absolutely deadly at the same time. "High Trader, as you pointed out, humanity has been in space for 200 years. During that time, we've picked up some interesting habits. You might call it trust but verify. We like to know everything about everyone we're dealing with." More displays appeared, showing real-time surveillance footage from inside Vorthan facilities. Security cameras that the Vorthans thought were secret were actually being watched by human intelligence agents. Computer networks they believed were protected had been quietly compromised for years. "The truth is," James continued conversationally, "humans have been very busy since we joined the galactic community. We've been learning about all our neighbors. Their strengths, their weaknesses, their secrets, their crimes. We believe in being prepared for all possibilities." The other aliens in the room started to understand something terrifying. Humanity hadn't been weak or unprepared. They had been gathering intelligence on every major power in the galaxy while pretending to be harmless newcomers. Vex looked around desperately at the other alien delegates, hoping for support. But they were all staring at the displays showing just how thoroughly humanity had infiltrated and mapped Vorthan operations. If humans knew this much about the Vorthans, what did they know about everyone else? "This is impossible," Vex stammered. "Your species is too young, Too primitive to have this kind of intelligence capability. Maya laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Hi trader, you keep making the same mistake. You assume that being newer means being weaker. But humans have a saying, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. We've learned to watch our neighbors very carefully. The displays shifted to show more Vorthan secrets. Secret military projects. Hidden financial accounts. Personal information about Vorthan leaders that could destroy their careers and lives. James stepped closer to his microphone. Hi trader, you mentioned that accidents could happen to human colonies. I want you to know that we've thought very carefully about that possibility. In fact, we've spent considerable time and resources preparing for exactly that kind of accident. The room felt like it was getting smaller and colder. Everyone could sense that humanity was about to reveal just how dangerous they really were, and it was going to change everything about how the galaxy worked. The polite, friendly mask was completely gone now. What stood in front of them was something much more frightening, a species that smiled and said please and thank you while secretly preparing to destroy anyone who threatened them. The huge screen at the front of the chamber suddenly turned on by itself. Nobody had pressed any buttons or given any commands. James Washington just nodded slightly at Dr. Maya Thompson, who began speaking with the cold precision of a scientist describing a lab experiment. Right now, there are 12 ships surrounding High Trader Vex's home system, Maya announced calmly. These ships are all registered as human merchant cargo vessels. As she talked, the big screen showed live video from space around the Vorthan home planet. But I should explain what that really means. The image on the screen suddenly changed in a way that made everyone gasp. The ships that had looked like ordinary cargo haulers began to transform. Fake outer shells slid away like costumes being removed. What had appeared to be simple trading vessels revealed themselves to be massive military warships bristling with advanced weapons and defense systems. The transformation was like watching wolves take off sheep costumes. Where there had been 12 harmless-looking cargo ships, there were now 12 deadly warships capable of destroying entire planets. The human spaceships Liberty Bell, Constitution, and Declaration of Independence have been doing regular trade business in your area for the past year and a half, James explained in the same casual tone someone might use to talk about the weather. They've really gotten to know your neighborhood very well during that time. More screens around the room lit up, showing similar scenes happening everywhere the Vorthans had important facilities. Around their mining colonies, fake human cargo ships were revealing themselves to be warships. Around their trading posts, the same thing was happening. Around their secret military bases, human vessels that had been pretending to be harmless merchants were showing their true nature as instruments of war. Every single important Vorthan location in space was surrounded by human military ships that had been hiding in plain sight for months or even years. Captain Deshaun Rivers activated his communication device, speaking clearly enough that everyone in the chamber could hear his words through the room's sound system. Ghost Squadron, this is Rivers. Keep watching but don't power up weapons yet. We're still trying to talk this out peacefully. The response came back through the speakers, crisp and professional. Understood, Captain. All weapons systems remain on standby. Ready to unwrap our presence on your command. The casual way they talked about devastating weapons as presents sent chills down everyone's spine. This was clearly not the first time the humans had done something like this. High Trader Vex's scaly skin turned a sick gray color, like he was about to throw up. This is an act of war. You're threatening sovereign Vorthan territory. James tilted his head slightly, like he was confused by the accusation. High Trader, those are just merchant ships doing legal business in international space. They have every right to be there. He paused for a moment, letting that sink in. But I should mention something interesting. Humanity operates the largest merchant fleet in known space. We have over 40,000 ships currently active, all officially registered as peaceful trading vessels. He paused again, and his smile became even more terrifying. Of course, the line between merchant ships and military ships has always been a bit blurry in human culture. Our ancestors used to call them privateers, ships that could carry cargo one day and fight battles the next. The implications hit the room like a physical blow. If humanity had 40,000 ships, and they were all potentially military vessels in disguise, then humans weren't just a new species asking for equal treatment. They were possibly the most powerful military force in the entire galaxy, and they had been hiding it by pretending to be peaceful traders. Dr. Thompson touched her tablet again, and new information appeared on the screens. Our merchant marine has been very active over the past 2 centuries. We now have regular trade routes to every major system in known space. Our ships visit every important world, every major station, every significant military installation. We're very thorough in our business practices. The room went dead silent as everyone realized what she was really saying. Human merchant ships had been mapping and positioning themselves around every important location in the galaxy. They weren't just surrounding the Vorthons, they were potentially in position to strike at anyone, anywhere, at any time. Captain Rivers spoke into his communicator again. All units, maintain current positions. Continue standard merchant operations. Remember, we're just peaceful traders going about our normal business. The response from space was immediate. Roger that, Captain. Just friendly neighborhood merchants, keeping the peace through superior firepower. The casual humor in the face of such overwhelming military power was somehow more frightening than any direct threat could have been. Vex looked around the room desperately, seeking support from the other alien delegates. But they were all staring at the displays with expressions of shock and fear. They were beginning to understand that every single one of their civilizations was probably under the same kind of hidden surveillance and potential threat. "How long?" whispered the Nexri ambassador, her voice barely audible. "How long have you been watching all of us?" James smiled that polite, terrifying smile again. "Ambassador, humans believe in being good neighbors. Good neighbors keep an eye on each other, make sure everyone stays safe and happy. We've been very good neighbors since the day we joined the galactic community." The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the room. Humanity hadn't joined the galactic community as weak newcomers seeking protection and guidance. They had infiltrated it as a military intelligence operation, positioning themselves to control or destroy any threat to human interests while maintaining the perfect disguise of friendly, harmless traders. The galaxy had been conquered by a species that smiled and said please and thank you while quietly preparing to end any civilization that crossed them. Dr. Maya Thompson stepped forward, her voice carrying the same calm authority she had used when she was a college professor before becoming a diplomat. She looked like a teacher about to give a very important lesson to students who hadn't been paying attention. The Vorthon Consortium currently controls about 37% of all trade routes in the galaxy, she began, reading from her tablet like she was giving a lecture. Your organization owns 43 major space stations, 18 manufacturing facilities, and roughly 12,000 commercial ships. Those are very impressive numbers. She looked up from her notes with a smile that seemed friendly but felt dangerous. Humanity's merchant fleet has 42,000 ships currently working in space, with factories that can build 15% more ships every year. We found it very helpful to have what you might call backup plans in our transportation systems. The meaning of her words hit the room like a sledgehammer. The council members suddenly understood that when humans had asked politely for equal trading rights, they weren't really asking. They were just being polite before taking what they wanted anyway. James Washington straightened his tie again, and somehow that simple gesture felt more threatening than if he had pulled out a weapon. "High Trader Vex, I want you to know that humanity really does value peaceful cooperation above everything else. We've learned from our own violent history that fighting should always be the last choice. We much prefer to solve problems through respect and fair negotiation." He stopped talking for a moment, letting everyone look at the screen still showing human warships surrounding Vorthon territory. "But we've also learned that some people think being polite means being weak. When that happens, we find it helpful to correct those misunderstandings." High Trader Vex collapsed back into his chair like all the air had been sucked out of him. His confident, threatening attitude was completely gone. What do you want from us?" James's voice became cheerful again, like nothing had happened. "Our demands haven't changed at all. Equal trading status, fair access to markets, and mutual respect between all parties. Exactly the same things we asked for when this meeting started." The vote was unanimous. Even the alien species that had originally supported the Vorthons against humanity quickly changed their minds as they realized just how powerful humans really were. Nobody wanted to be the next target of humanity's polite attention. As the meeting ended, the threatening formations of human warships began to scatter and fade back into looking like ordinary cargo ships. James walked around the room shaking hands with each delegate, his warm, friendly diplomatic personality returning as if the terrifying display had never happened. "What a great meeting we had today," he told the Nexri ambassador, who was still staring at the now empty tactical displays with shock. "I really hope everyone can join us for coffee in the human embassy. Dr. Thompson makes amazing pastries, and Captain Rivers has some very interesting stories about merchant marine operations if anyone wants to hear them." The Nexri ambassador managed a weak, shaky smile. "Ambassador Washington, can I ask you something? How long has humanity been ready for this kind of demonstration?" James thought about the question carefully, like he was trying to decide how much truth to reveal. Well, our merchant marine expansion program started about 6 months after we first made contact with the galactic community. Captain Rivers likes to say that humans are natural-born traders. We just like to make sure our customers feel completely secure in their business relationships with us. As they walked toward the embassy lounge, Dr. Thompson joined them. Ambassador, the Altarian delegate was asking questions about our manufacturing capabilities. Should I tell them about the production statistics from our outer colony shipyards? James replied with a gentle smile that somehow seemed more frightening than his earlier coldness. Let's save that information for another time, Doctor. I think we've given everyone enough education for one day. Behind them, High Trader Vex sat alone in the empty chamber, staring at screens that still showed human ships going about their peaceful business throughout Vorthan space. Those ships were a constant, polite reminder that humanity was a species that preferred to say please and thank you, but had quietly positioned themselves to destroy any civilization that threatened them. The galaxy had learned a very important lesson that day. Humanity's diplomatic politeness wasn't a weakness that could be exploited. It was a choice they could take away whenever they felt it was necessary. And sometimes, the most dangerous creatures in the universe are the ones who smile while they're threatening you. From that day forward, every alien species in the galaxy understood the truth about humans. They weren't the friendly, harmless newcomers everyone had thought they were. They were apex predators who had disguised themselves as sheep while secretly becoming the wolves that could devour anyone who crossed them. The age of human dominance in the galaxy had begun not with conquest or war, but with a polite smile and a gentle reminder of what happened to those who mistook kindness for weakness. Humanity had won the galaxy by being so terrifyingly nice that nobody dared to be mean to them ever again.